trashipa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pege drolor zampe se paracen palden lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manyasa Oma Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Omo a Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dar Uta Varda Nishri Bad Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nishas Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sitsu Sua Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo Su Uyon Sunge Nawa Tedo Sua Tupi Nime Sowa Debe Se Desen Korlo Visu Leksyon Vila Sambe Dede Malepa Gemel Hinge Dubra Jinge Lo Sani Sodan Dikun Shapete Inge namge yinsu lekshune laksen sami yansu chopadan cherani tin chongra jingelo chencho parge ninsen tukunsu nyu peme sudu lekshune chencho trube geke kunshishi tingen dela dubra jingelo dagilo na chola chopadan chuni samgar nimba shiwag chodan tingbe dede malupa beme hinge dubra Dorna tingne pserawa tamchet Negav tamchet rese kyamne lama kele me Tulche chingi dala sitsu Gongya drewe nyamda dachala Jetsun lame tulche rabgome Kudan sungi nawa drame tu Nyamsunyowe kesan tobrashu Kewa kuntu yanda lama dan Rame cheki pela lomchesu Sadan lamge yunten rabzone Dorje change koban nyur tobe sho Pakyuke kudan dagi alu Pakyuke sundan dagi nga Pakyuke tukdan dagi yi Ten yerme chiktu chingi alu Makyuke kudan dagi alu Makyuke sundan dagi Makyuke tukdan dagi Ten yerme chiktu chingi alu Om Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Shakyamunye Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Swaha. Chodon tsoge chonam la chancho pardo danik dagi chushe gibe sonamgi drola pinchira sangye druparasho sangye chodon tsoge chonam la chancho pardo danik kyapso chi dagi chushe gibe sonamki drola pinchira sangye druparasho Sangye chodan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparashon. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good evening. In this life, for all of us, we're born alone, we live alone, and we die alone. In the sense that no one can live our lives for us. No one can understand us the way we understand ourselves. We understand ourselves. No one can see us the way we see ourselves. No one can live the emotions that we live, our sadness, our joy. And there's not much other choice in this. I mean, that each one of us, for each one of us, our inner reality is private, and no one else can live it for us. Strangely, the closer someone gets, could happen that the more wrong the vision that they have of us. You know, the more, I don't know if it's clear, but it seems that the more we grasp at an image of someone, the more wrong our perception is, because we, through the words that are said, the behavior, the things we see, the experiences that we live together, and based on all of that, we judge. And every time we live something, we judge. But this measurement that we have, is just ourselves. We are always looking at the other and judging the other based on how we are made and based on our own experiences. What happens instead is that that the experiences
of another person don't correspond completely at our own. So I judge your behavior, your way of acting. I could also maybe try to imagine your emotions, your feelings, your intentions, etc., etc. But using as a reference point myself. And I get to a conclusion. You are like this. But what happens is this conclusion, where the conclusion I reach, somehow I try to convince myself, and I try to solidify that conclusion about how you are. But what happens is my conclusion is quite static, but the other person is, does the other person stay static, like the image that I've created, or are they in constant transformation? They're in constant transformation, like all of us. I mean, every situation we live, every place that we go, everything, a person or situation, thought, memories, projection, whatever, anything that we interact with, even our own ideas, within a person. Like a person, for example, has an amazing idea, a strong idea, and then that interaction, the interaction of that idea and that person changes the person. It changes the way he acts or speaks. So sometimes someone interacts with something very, very strong, something very deep and strong inside, but the people outside don't realize it. So we're all in constant transformation. And we're not great at updating our mental image of others. So it's very normal that we think we know someone really well, but we are stuck with this mental image that we have created, which doesn't correspond, doesn't correspond with the person, and is also old. It's not updated. So something that's very important is to update this mental image that we create of other people and give time and space for this. But there's something that comes together with this, which is, I wanted to say it later, but I think it's better to add it now. We're not normally so coherent in the sense, we're full of contradictions, aren't we? We have our contradictions. There are things that there are things like we like one aspect of it, but not another, or want something, but I also want the other, but the two things can't exist together. I mean, we're just made up of so many contradictions. And so, just like all of us have these contradictions, like between what I thought yesterday, what I think today, because also we're very strongly influenced by our context, by our body, by many factors, by the people with which we interact. I mean, we're changing, we're transforming, and in the middle of all of this, we have our incoherences. And just like we have our own, everyone we meet they have theirs too, in one way or another. I mean, we all have them. So what happens is that when we relate with another person, and this is happening constantly, it's something important, and Lama Gangchen also gave us this teaching through his example. It's clearly manifested once. A journalist asked him, "Why do you have so many friends?" And he answered, "I have so many friends because I relate with the qualities of the people and not their defects." But not just the qualities not was he relating. Now he was not relating just to the qualities, but he also chose to be faithful to those qualities. So even when the people would show, let's say, their side B, they would get angry or would do something bad, or let's say had some kind of behavior that didn't correspond with that positive quality with which he related to, he would stay faithful to that positive quality. He had the time and the patience and to wait for the person to go back to showing that other positive quality. This reminds me of a time where I was talking to someone in the morning. Someone told me something beautiful and with a lot of clarity. It had to do with his life. I need to do things like this because of this, that, and the other. I had a lot of clarity, and it was really beautiful the way he was explaining everything. And then evening came, and boom, something happened, and then he came to me with something absolutely different, totally different. And I certainly said, "Excuse me, this person, the morning person told me this, and the evening person told me that. Which one should I follow?" And the person looked at me and said, "Okay, no, better follow, better listen to the morning person," because often, what we want is to show a certain malaise, to ask for help. Unfortunately, there are some who don't know how to do better than just punching to ask for help. Instead, maybe there's someone to ask for help. They show. They show their need for help by giving a punch. But the main point, what I wanted to show, is that when we're in front of another person, we should remember that the other person, like ourselves, we are made up of many aspects and we have our contradictions. But it's up to us to relate, to choose which aspect we want to relate with. Because you show a beautiful aspect, for example. I like it, how we develop a friendship, an attraction towards these characteristics to you as a person. But at a certain point, you show a darker side, and you act in a way that I don't like, etc. So I feel like you have cheated me. I think, with all the love I've given you, everything that I've, everything beautiful that's been between us, now you act like this. And if, maybe the other person could answer, I'm made up of contradictions. In Brazil, we have a saying that one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing. So, the fact that I have doubts and uncertainties and fears and jealousies or anything like that, it doesn't take away the fact that I have also love and kindness, faith, and many other qualities. So one thing, it doesn't necessarily take away from another. And so, what I think makes us suffer a lot is when it's like when I see you, anyone, impersonal you, our tendency is to relate with an idealized image of the person. We create our own identity of the other, and we have this idea, this image of who the other person is. And if at a certain point that person shows, or we realize that there's a characteristic that doesn't correspond to this idealized image, then we say, this isn't you, or you shouldn't be like this. You're not like this. You shouldn't be like this. It's almost like we feel as if we've instead we feel like I had faith in you, that you were like this, and now you're not like that. But in reality, I am both. You know, we're not one thing. We're just a flow of emotions and thoughts and choices, interactions. I mean, we're a constant flow of these things. We're not something static and fixed. So the less attached I am to an idealized image of how a person or a situation should be, but now we're talking about people, or like how a person is, the less I will suffer when I realize that that person doesn't correspond to that image that I had created. And at that point, what I need to do is to update that image instead of going against the person. And in this case, what's important is to choose. I want to relate with this quality, because what I see happen very often, I see happen, let's say, I say, I love you because you correspond to these characteristics, to this image, I feel fine, etc., etc. The day in which you don't correspond anymore, at that point, it's as if I can't trust you anymore. But if trusting you means that means that you correspond to my expectations, then I should never be able to trust you, because you'll never really correspond to my expectations. You or no one, because no one, I mean, we're just not able to project, to make this projection that will be satisfied. And I saw Lama Gangchen manifest often. He would say, I gave you my friendship. I've given you my friendship. If you want to give me yours, or you want to keep our friendship, this is your problem, not mine. I've seen people, I saw people who, like, at a certain point, actually acted very poorly, towards him, but he always stayed the same towards them. He was helpful and kind, and always there with his friendship. And and then the day that the person then would go back and show this friendship again, it's not like he would say, "Oh, now you're coming back to me." No, he was always like he was, kind, and this requires a certain humility, because I see that happens, like, oh, you said this, you did this, you acted this way, so I'm going to act like this too. Instead, no. I choose the way to behave according to how I think is best, how it's best for me. I choose to act with gratitude, with humility, thinking of the best, what's best for everyone, relating to the qualities of everyone, and then what you do and what you decide to do is not a decision that I make. But if the fact, for someone, if someone acts in a let's say if someone acts in a way that doesn't generate positive interactions, I mean, that is no justification for me to do the same. So, in some way, we should remember that one day someone manifests something, one thing, and the next day manifests another thing, and we should be able to relate to the different aspects without letting one take away from the other. Because I see. I mean, we live in a time, in a social context, where the material problems are very, very few. And they're really quite superfluous. Excuse me if I say this, but I don't see anyone around me who doesn't have food on the table, or who can't take care of the basic necessities. Unfortunately, there are too many people in the world who do have this problem. and if we look, I mean, most of the problems that come out from the relationships. I remember also once talking to my mother, who takes care of terminal patients. She said, "You would think that someone dying, that their last thoughts and preoccupations, worries, would be about their death or their sickness, but instead, what make them suffer the most would have to do with relationships. So my son who doesn't talk to me, or my wife who's always been like this, or the husband, the wife, the child. I mean, the conflicts in human relationships are what weigh the most heavily. So a key for us is knowing how to relate to each other in a mature way. Some time ago, I was talking to someone in Tibetan, and he said something that made me reflect. He said the least that someone should be able to do to be well is to know how to deal with people, because wherever you go, you need to relate with other people, and if you don't know how to do that, then wherever you go, you're not going to be well. And none of us is totally autonomous. That doesn't depend on others. And when we enter in conflict, that generates a lot of inner tension. I remember just yesterday, I was remembering just once where I got angry. It was many years ago, and luckily, so it's not luck actually, but I thank the effort that I put into past lives, because in this life, anger is not something that is part of me. So, but I remember that I've entered this moment, where I had this person in front of me for about 20 seconds. There was this situation of kind of blackmail actually, and then corruption, and it was being blackmailed. This is not. If someone blackmails me, then I would do absolutely opposite, of what they would expect, I'm not often blackmailed, so it's not really a problem. But in my daily life, they're also like there's micro blackmail, emotional blackmail. There's sometimes, look at what's going on, then I'm going to get angry. Okay, well, you get angry, you're going to just doing, but it's harming yourself, not me. Say, I'm gonna just explode. Well, then you're hurting yourself. I mean, this is blackmail. You're trying to scare me. So I kind of have this tendency, if someone is blackmailing me, and they say, I'm going to leave. Well, there you go. The door's open. So anyway, it was in this situation where there was a situation of blackmail with corruption. I mean, it was a very difficult situation, an unhappy situation, and that's also when there's in this situation there was a lack of transparency, which I really don't like, and there I really lost my patience. I was just very, very close to this person physically, and I spoke very strongly, etc. I got angry. It lasted 20 to 15, 20 seconds, very short amount of time. I calmed down right away. This person didn't realize it too much, and when when I went walking, it happened here. It was here in Bay, in Albagnano. And I remember that there was like in my stomach, like a stone that just was stuck in my stomach. And there I looked at myself and I said, look, if 1 minute of anger makes me feel this, like this, then I can't allow myself to ever get angry again. And there I took a commitment that no matter what happens, I can't allow myself to ever feel like this again. And I had to do an important exercise because it was a situation that was very difficult, that I didn't like at all. And I looked at that situation again and I said, no matter what happens, and I really imagined the worst, it won't be a reason to get angry, because in the end what happens, it's a little bit like pollution. When someone lives in a polluted place, he doesn't realize it. But it doesn't mean that pollution is not harmful to one's health. When you're always in a noisy place, you're not perceiving, you're not noticing that noise anymore. But that doesn't mean that noise doesn't have its effect. So if someone is always angry, one doesn't realize, one doesn't notice how much harm one is doing to oneself. But it doesn't mean that harm isn't real. So in that moment, I said, I cannot allow myself to do that again. Not having this habit of getting angry, I felt the effects very strongly and immediately. So I realized just how harmful it was, and I knew I just did not want to repeat that. For me, for no one else. So. But what happens around me doesn't depend on me, but how I react, that depends on me. We don't live in a perfect world. Much less a world that corresponds to our expectations and our idealized images, of everything and every person. But if I need to get upset and I need to react every time that someone doesn't correspond to what how I think the person should be, or how or the situation doesn't correspond to the way I think it should be, then I would just be constantly reacting. Maybe every once in a while I'd be able to take a breath. So it's very important to take the reins in our own hands and say, what happens around me doesn't depend on me. I need to interact and try to better things according to my own vision. I mean, how many times have you ever tried to change someone? I don't know, your own family members, your partners, your friends, your children. One tries, one tries, don't we? I love you, and I think you're acting, you're behaving badly, you're not doing what you should be doing. I try, but in the end, do we succeed? No. The only place where I can succeed is where, if I have the wisdom to interact in such a way that you make that change in yourself for yourself. But I can't change you. I need to have the patience, the wisdom to interact in a way to change. If there's a situation that I don't like, I can interact with the situation to try to direct in a certain way. But things require time. And let's conclude this point, and then we'll go on to what I really wanted to talk about tonight. It's important to not be too attached to the image we have of things, and remember that life is a constant flow, and we're the ones who need to adapt to every situation and not make, and it's not the situations that adapt to us, because we don't have control over the world. At least I don't. What I see is that I can make choices, I can interact in different ways, and that way I can change many things. But it does. But what happens, what doesn't happen, how one behaves, how one doesn't behave, what one does, this doesn't depend on me. And so it's important, very important, to have the humility of understanding that we have limits, like the limit of love. Doesn't matter how much I love you, I can't make you happy. And we need to be aware of that. I don't know if you've ever felt like this or heard someone say, with everything that I've done for you, you're not happy. You're still not happy. Like maybe someone who's complaining and someone's suffering, and then the other one says, "But I love you." And you say, "Okay, well, thanks. It's okay. I like that you love me, but that's not taking away that's not what will take away my suffering." And every once in a while, there's that thing, someone will say, with everything I do for you, with all the love I have for you, and you're still not happy, as if. So the point is, my suffering doesn't depend on you, and my happiness doesn't depend on you. It depends on how I live my life, how I interact with others. So it's important for us to remember, have this awareness that our suffering comes from how we relate with the world, and not from the world in and of itself. I know that this is quite a strong affirmation, and many of us would say, "Oh, yes, Lama, but you put yourself in that situation, and look, there's this, there's that, and there's this thing and that thing." The happiest people and the most peaceful people that I've ever met, they're not people who've had perfect situations. There are people who have a wisdom and the stability to face all situations. Lama Gangchen Rinpoche himself, for me, is an important example of someone who was stable and joyous and always at peace with himself and with others. He didn't have an easy life without problems. He had many situations that would have really broken many of us. But what happens is, at least begin to observe, to say, okay, I can change some situations by interacting like this instead of like that. But deeply, what I need to do is to change the way I relate with the world and not change the world. And here there are 3 levels of practice that I'm going to just touch on briefly. Let's take anger, for example, or desire. We can take anything. Anger somehow is the easiest to talk about. The first level is where I don't have the ability to not get angry in front of my object of anger. So if I'm faced with a certain situation, no matter how much I know that it's not the right thing to do, I'm just not able to not get angry. When we're in a situation similar to this, the first step to take is to move away from the object, to step away from our object of anger or our object of sadness, our object of dissatisfaction or jealousy or envy, etc. not thinking that that's the solution, but 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 knowing that we're not going to be able to develop the antidote if we're in constant if we're constantly in touch with the poison. So if we talk about if to develop antidotes like patience and compassion, I need to be well. I can't develop those antidotes if I'm always angry, for example. So if I'm not able, first I need to move away from the situation to then start an inner process of, to develop those inner qualities, to familiarize myself with those qualities. Because the second level is where I recognize that the problem is not the situation, but how I live it, and then I try to live that situation without acting negatively. This is the ideal. If I don't do the first, then I won't be able to do the second. Sometimes we need a little bit of space. But if I don't, if I do the first without directing myself towards the second, then it could happen that I move away from my object of anger. I just pretend. I think that the situation is resolved, but then the one day that I find myself faced with my object of anger, then I just explode. So it's important to have the awareness that moving away from the object of anger is not the solution. It's just something that allows me the space to work on developing an antidote. The third level, which one can do after having mastered the first and the second, is to understand that with anger, for example, there's an energetic aspect. When there's anger or fear or any strong emotion, there's a lot of energy that's moving inside of us. And to know how to direct that energy in a positive way. Because anger, for example, how does it arise? How does it work? It's an energy of destruction, of aversion towards that which I deem an object of suffering. We're not angry towards things that are good for us. No, we have anger towards what we think is a reason for suffering. That people even get angry with a table. I've seen that. Somebody's walking and they hit their pinky on the table, and they turn around and they get angry at the table, and then they pound their fist on the table. We're strange. This is possible. But what happens is that anger is this aversion towards what I think is an object of suffering, the cause of suffering. I want to eliminate this cause of suffering, but unfortunately, I'm projecting the cause of the suffering into what is not a cause of suffering. So instead of getting angry at the table, I could say I'd never walk without being aware of my steps. In the Vajrayana, we talk about transforming this energy into the path. So we shift our object of anger towards our own ignorance. We direct that energy towards what is actually generating the suffering. But I repeat that I can only do this once I've been able to practice the first and the second well. Having said this, what I wanted to talk about tonight is the fact that each one of us, during our lives, as we said at the beginning, and we're born, we live, and we die alone. We interact with others and situations, etc. We're here today. We've lived many things. We'll have many situations to experience, many people to meet. But sooner or later we're going to die. Aren't we? There was a friend of mine who used to use this Tibetan saying, when someone would act with aggression or with jealousy, let's say, or we have some kind of negative behavior, he would say, speaking Tibetan, happy the one who doesn't have to die, which means not like, okay, it's not saying, oh, you're doing this and you're going to hell. No. Beyond being dying or not dying, I mean, what we generate in this lifetime, we take it to our next life, and also along in this life too. I mean, even within a lifetime, we have many lives, no? Don't we? If I think for myself. This is like my fourth, maybe even my fifth life, for sure my fourth life, let's say, within this same lifetime. So, I mean, how often can it happen that, like, the people with which you interact, at a certain point, everything just changes. I mean, in India, for example, I had a very close relationship, and then at a certain point I left India, and I never saw them again. My context, everything just changed so radically. Can also, if we change jobs, for example, the people that we were very close to, then we don't see them again. The context, the situations change. But if something's very, very clear, that there's something that connects all of these lives that we're living, that we are ourselves, and we can recognize our certain attitudes that we have, or behaviors that we have, for better or worse, in our past lives and in today too. So what's important is not accumulating knowledge. It's not important to do many things, because the things we do, sooner or later, they just end. And once we've done them, and they're over, it's just a memory, and at a certain point we even forget that memory. What's important is what I become, according, the experiences that I live in my life, because that's what's going to continue. What I do is not that important. What happens is not so important, but it's much more important, what I become through these experiences is the most important, even with the experience in relationships with other people. So, a relationship, we shouldn't ask, this is it pleasurable? This relationship, is it pleasurable or not pleasurable? Or through this relationship, am I a better person? Or is this an interaction that is pleasurable but just increases my bad habits? Because that happens too, doesn't it? So we should think long term. What I become through the experiences that I live, and not that specific experience in and of itself. And thinking of this, I was reflecting before on the fact of information. Knowledge is important, but it's nothing other than a tool. So knowledge is important to help us take decisions, to interact with others, have a certain world view, and as the consequence, live in one way or another. But we live in times where we give a lot of value to knowledge, but somehow we give a lot of importance to information. And what happens is having access to information does not mean having knowledge. And having knowledge doesn't mean having realizations. It doesn't mean having a certain level of like inner state that we call realizations. I mean, in these modern times, we have this idea that we have more knowledge because we have more access to information, but I think that we're more ignorant than those who came before us. And forgive me if I say it like this, because what happens when I come into contact with information and I need to research it, I need time to find it, and then I need to assimilate it. Little by little, it becomes part of me, and when information is part of me, then when I'm faced with a situation, that reference point helps me make a decision. But when I don't have the time to assimilate the information, or I don't even put effort into getting that information because it's constantly accessible. And when I'm faced with a situation where I need to make a decision, I don't have access to that information. I see also, like within Tibetan and Buddhist studies, the memorization is given a tremendous amount of importance. And then one says, well, why do I need to put so much effort into memorizing when I can have everything here on my telephone, And Lama said, well, the phone can break, and remember that, the many texts, teachings exist today because they had been memorized. The many people who had to leave Tibet, they were able, thanks to their memorization, were able to rewrite these texts. But aside from that, when I memorize something, I'm little by little I assimilate it, and that knowledge becomes part of me. I repeat it so many times, and very gradually, softly, it starts to change something inside me. It starts to be part of my knowledge, and this allows us to have a deeper experience, a real knowledge, and not just access to information. I don't know if you share this, but I have this strong sensation that because we're able to access, I don't mean everything, but just an amazing amount of information just in the palm of our hand. Today, for example, I can access an enormous amount of Tibetan text just from my cell phone. The other day, they put me in a group, and this like a kind of WhatsApp. I don't know which one it was. It's a group of Tibetans group of Tibetans in India and Tibet, and you just write the title of a text, and then they just send you the PDF, and every day an enormous quantity of texts, come through this chat. People don't have the deep knowledge anymore because the information is accessible. So why should I try to memorize and learn or research and assimilate? If when I need it, I just have it at the tip of my fingers. Because it's through this assimilation that it's through that it becomes a part of me that becomes part of my ability to discern. There are also studies that show that those who grew up in the era of the internet, these studies show that they are much more easily influenced than in the past. Because the more knowledge I have that I've assimilated over time, then the more I'm able to make a solid judgment. Instead, the opposite leads me to be very easily manipulated when my knowledge is superficial. But I'd like to take a step further. So the importance of studying, the importance of knowing. Unfortunately, sometimes we think about studies being important to get a degree and find a job, but actually studying means amplifying our mind, our worldview, understanding things in different ways. Something that for me, I've had several experiences that were very clear that when we're faced with something that we don't know, it's as if we can't see it. Once instead that we start to have knowledge about something, it appears everywhere. And a very, very clear example of this is here in Albagnano. Having to manage and be part of this construction at a certain point, and even today I had a meeting about this, that we needed to make an electrical an electric transformation system. So I said, okay, well let's build this. What could it, how difficult could it be? But instead, it's supposed to be, it's supposed, instead, it's like 2 meters high, and I thought, no, it's impossible that it's so complex. And then, when I was I drove from here to Malpensa, and I realized that there is an enormous quantity of these electrical transformers. I had never seen them. I have gone so many times from Malpensa to Milan, Malpensa to Albagnano. And that day that I'm driving, it seemed like they were just coming up like mushrooms. But what really touched me, not that there were so many of these electrical transformation cabins. What touched me is that I had never noticed them before. So when we open our minds to an aspect of reality, we start to see it everywhere. It just shows itself to us. It's not that it wasn't there before, but we weren't open to seeing it. So knowledge is very important because everything that we learn helps us learn and know many other things. That's why we say, like, the more I know that I don't know, because the more I learn, the more I'm able to open my horizons. So for me, it's important to be curious, to want to know, to learn, and be open to study, open to receive new information, to assimilate this new information constantly. When I got to India, one day, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, before leaving, I stayed. Before he left, I stayed, but before he went back, he said, "You need to study. It's okay to do other things, read other things, use the computer, but remember something. The more useful information you put in your head, the more inner space you'll have. The more useless information you put inside, the less space you'll have." And it's just like that. Because the more information that lead to other understandings, or information that shows, it deepens my worldview, then the more information I put in that helps me like that, it opens me up, gives me much more space. Instead, the information that doesn't bring anything, like gossip, or just talking about the lives of other people, or where there's envy or fear. I mean, this is information that just, they block me. It blocks my inner space. So that's why it's important to always be open to learn, learn things that then help us learn other things. And it's something that's really beautiful is when I'm able to meet people with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and are always open to learning new things independently of their age. So I think that we shouldn't study because we should do something. We should study because knowledge that is assimilated gives us a lot more richness and abilities to help us discern better and make better decisions for ourselves. So I invite everyone to never stop learning and assimilating knowledge, always with an open mind. Also saying, okay, learning also being open to changing our minds, seeing that things are different than what we thought, what we thought they were. So I invite you to read social media less and read books more. Study. Give time to assimilate information and not just stay on this superficial level and pass from one thing to another, because our mind is made of habits, for better or worse. We're made of habits, and when we get used to being superficial, then it becomes very difficult to go deeper on many, many things. Because there's also a physical process, and our mind is not independent from the body. The things go completely together. There's a physical process that's connected to novelty. When we come into contact with something that's new, that brings us a little bit of, that gives us this little dopamine, like this pleasure hormone. So there's something new, and it's like, oh. But if I have a novelty after one after the other, then I get stuck there. But instead, what I want is the pleasure of the novelty, not that thing, And social media, and the relationship we have with our cell phone or the news, it seems coherent or normal that when one watches the news, that you watch like the news of the kind of terroristic attack, and then there's also the gossip of this singer. It's absolutely. I don't really watch news, but it seems to me that for years now they've mixing all sorts of news, all sorts of types of news together, and it's not coherent. It's more like entertainment. Even when you're either looking online or you're looking on paper, I don't know how many people really stop and read the article and think about, even just trying to understand what's going on, maybe try to look for different points of view on the same thing, trying to think of what they can do about it. I don't know how many people engage like that. It's mostly just about the novelty. And this creates, it's habit forming. Then we're addicted to novelty. We always want something new. And we're not able, we get bored easily, and we can't go deep into things. And we're bored because we don't have this habit anymore of going more deeply into things. And then our level of awareness stays on that same plane. Well, it depends where everyone is. I personally am not satisfied with my own. I want to understand more. I want to deepen my understandings of things. Also, because when we talk about news and information, for me, I've learned that the truth is between the truths. It's never just one. It's never just one point of view. For me to get to my own conclusion, I need to listen to at least 2 or 3 points of view. There's never like one thing is like that. They're different points of view on the same subject. Having said that, the most fundamental point is understanding that in front of all the situations that I live, and there are many, what do I want to develop inside myself? What do I want to become? And have the flexibility, like little by little, as different situations come up, to try to maintain that same direction. This, for me, is a fundamental point, because life goes by very quickly. This year I'm going to turn 40. And yesterday I was thinking, this morning I think, I don't remember. Anyway, I was thinking, look, I'm going to turn 40. Look at all the things I want to do. And, for me it feels like I've just done the preliminary things. I mean, it's not like I've been, still. I mean, I've worked a little bit. I've put effort, but I do have this feeling that, given the conditions that I have and the opportunities that there are, if I were to make a list of all the things I want to do, create, to, be able to interact with, I mean, I'm really at the beginning. But I'm not 20 anymore. And even if I even just look at my own spiritual practice, I mean, there's so much ahead of me, what I'd like to do, so many aspects, but life goes by so quickly. And if we observe, I mean, how much time do we waste with situations and interactions that are situations that don't bring us anything. They don't bring us anything extra. In reality, life goes by quickly, and we just don't have time to waste with these things. One Geshe Yeshe Wanchuk, a great master of Lama Gangchen, who was also my own teacher, he brought this to light in one of his teachings. He gave the example. He said that in our life we have an enormous potential. We all do. Because when we think about people who've done marvelous things, they had a human body like we do, but it depends on where one puts his energy. So, and he would say, imagine someone comes and lends you a machine that prints money. So, so we're given this printer that like prints money legally, official. It's not illegal, We just have this. Let's imagine that we have this ability to have this printer, this money printer at home, and it says you can use it as much as you want. As long as you can use it as much as you want. But the day that they ask, the day that you're asked to give it back, you need to give it back, and I don't know when that's going to be. So maybe you're going to keep it at home for a few years, or just a day, a few minutes. So we get home with this money printer. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to just put it in the basement because we need to finish watching our TV series, or we forget about it because we need to fight with someone or gossip with someone else? No, we probably put it right in the middle of the living room, and we just print money night and day because we don't know when they're going to come and take it away from us. And what happens is, in this life, we have an opportunity that is very, very beautiful in many different aspects, and it's like we put this opportunity aside. Oh, I don't have time now to use my life in a meaningful way. I need to get angry with this person. Oh, I don't have time now to use my life in a meaningful way. I need to be jealous about this, and I need to spend my time. I need to just spend my time thinking. In Portuguese and in Brazil, we say, think about the death of the goat. In the sense like, why you did this and why this happened. No, but life just goes on. It's passing us by. So excuse me if I say it like this, but we're going to die. And the day that we die, whether it's, a death where our body just doesn't sustain us anymore, or a death within this death, where a certain reality ends and a new one begins. You know, I mean, how many situations do we look at and we think they're going to be forever, and then at a certain point they just end? I've seen this with so many people. I've seen it also with myself. We don't know when these things are going to happen. And so I need to ask myself, when I become face to face with my death, I need to be prepared. And to prepare myself for death, there are 3 levels. Traditionally, it's said that a spiritual practitioner has, I think there are 3 different levels for spiritual practitioners to face his own death. The first level is to face his own death without any regret. So I've lived my life to the best of my abilities. I made mistakes, of course, but I recognized my errors. I tried to remedy them. I did my best, and so I don't have any regrets. I don't have any amends to make that I didn't already make. I don't say I'm at peace with myself in front of my own death, and that's already a lot, because to do that we need to get to the end of every day and be at peace with ourselves and with others, and that's marvelous. But remember that we can't do everything, but what we do with the best of our ability, even with being compassionate with our own limitations. We say, but with the conditions I have, with who I am, I'm doing my best, and I don't have regrets. And if I do my best to get the end of every day when we look at ourselves and we feel at peace with ourselves. We say, this, with awareness, this isn't good. Okay, so we need to make changes. Okay, this is going very well, and so we rejoice. And this is the first level. The second level is to get to one's own death without the fear of dying. So to be able to die without the fear of dying, then we need to have the awareness that there is a continuity after death. But if we think of death, not like the physical death, but like the death of a life within a life, when we get to this death, I mean, when we're faced with death, then it's scary, or we have if we have a situation that we think is going to be forever, and then we think it's going to end, we're afraid, because we think, how could I ever do this without this situation, or without this, But how we do it with our own inner tools, our own resources. So to not be afraid of dying, we need to be at peace with ourselves. I need to be able to say, no matter where I go, no matter with whom I am, or no matter what situation I find myself in, I'm going to have the tools to face it all. And to do that, we need to concentrate our energy into how we relate with the world. And the third level, the highest level, is where one is able to see that death is an enormous opportunity, actually. Because every time there's a death, there's a redirecting. And there we have a marvelous opportunity. Even when we talk about the physical death, without getting into the details now, but when we look at the aspects, it's only when one cycle is closes that we can redirect to another, but we're so attached and we grasp at a certain cycle, and it's hard for us to move on. Often, there's a reality that is no longer, but we're not able. We grasp at that, and we're not able to see anything else. But things are moving forward. I mean, don't stay still. How can I say? We should naturally live our daily life, facing the things that we need to face. I mean, we need to pay our bills. We need to eat. We need to take care of our health. We need to take care of our daily lives and every situation, everything. But it's there where we can make small choices that make an enormous difference. Because our material situation, a part of it depends on us, a part doesn't. There are things that came from years and years, or the relationships are human relationships. Some of these relationships we've chosen, some we haven't, and no matter where we go, we're always going to have to deal with other people, and it's not always easy. I'm convinced that everybody's normal until you know them well enough. Every once in a while, someone says, "Oh, but Lama, you are," or no, you just don't know me. I mean, up to a certain point, I'm convinced that even the Lama is wonderful and marvelous, as long as he says what that you want to hear. But the day that I say what you don't expect or want to hear, things change. Forgive me if I say like this. Obviously, as we said before, we're all made up of contradictions. I'm upset here, but I love this other part. We try to put it all together. But no matter who we have in front of us, we sooner or later will project our own fears and disappointments and expectations. It's normal. I mean, just remember that the world around us is a constant mirror of what is inside of us, because we cannot live anything independently of this filter of ourselves. And if my lenses are dirty, then no matter what I see, I'm going to see through a dirty lens. But often we don't recognize that we have a dirty lens, and often we make changes, but we always find ourselves in the same situation, whether we change our jobs or change our house, or but it's the way we are living. Personally, it's happened that I've changed certain situations, but then I find myself in that same situation, or I started living a change only when I took responsibility on a very deep level. I had the courage and the humility to say, I need to relate. I need to change the way I relate. But often we're just stubborn. We're proud. No, I'm not going to give up. It's that person's fault, but I'm just harming myself. I'm harming myself. Oh, but it doesn't matter. I know I'm right. But instead, no, it's important. We need to observe ourselves, ask ourselves what we want to be, and remember that gradually we need to familiarize ourselves. We need to give space. So when I say space, I mean if I don't allow myself to learn certain situations in in a certain way, then they're never going to happen. If I don't allow myself to live a situation with patience instead of getting angry, then I'm never going to develop that quality. If I don't allow myself to respect another person, even when they act in a way I don't like, then I'll never be able to develop respect. We should start with easier situations, you know. That's what I mean by giving space. It's a little bit like we said at the beginning when Rinpoche would say we should relate to the qualities of people and not their defects. We should do the same with ourselves because we all have marvelous qualities. I see it in each and every one of you. And we also do some pretty stupid things too. But we have beautiful qualities. And something that's very important along our path is to recognize our potential, rejoice for our qualities, and direct ourselves well, and have the courage and the humility to see, to look at our defects, the choices that are harmful, because unfortunately I see this every once in a while, and it's crazy in the sense that it's just really harmful, and I don't understand why. I mean, this difficulty to admit things that don't go well, that aren't positive. It always reminds me of the time that the plumber came to the house. Once I came back from a faraway trip. I went to the bathroom, and the toilet was plugged, and it was just a mess. And I called the plumber, and it was also the weekend. He came to the house. He takes the toilet apart, and there were. I have this visual memory. There were two pieces of watermelon, the watermelon rind, that two pieces that people had put in the toilet. And then he looked at me and said, "What did you do?" And I said, "What do me? I mean, I was on a trip." And then the plumber says, "It's never anyone's fault. I have, even when I go to someone's house who lived alone, it was never his fault, So I went to the only person who was in the house, only one in those days, and I said, "Did you eat any watermelon?" It was no, there was no watermelon. Okay, I thought, well, maybe there were, ghosts, the spirits, that just, or just like they creeped up through the sewage. I don't know how it came up, but what I learned from the watermelon, in the toilet, other than you should not throw watermelon in the toilet, is that it's never anyone's fault. So even when there's a situation that is really negative, so when I find myself in a situation where things are going badly and no one takes his own responsibility, I smile because I think about this story of the watermelon in the toilet, But we don't learn if we don't if we don't admit our own mistakes. It's something very beautiful to be able to admit our own mistakes without becoming defensive, If I say, for example, I see somebody's painting the wall yellow when instead it should be blue. Then I say, "I'm sorry, the wall, or the opposite, the wall shouldn't be yellow, it should be blue, And the person says, well, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I say, well, I'm not telling you that you're being disrespectful. I'm just talking about I'm just saying that it's not the right color, But I see very often that where there's a mistake, people get very defensive. But even other people make mistakes, not just me. Well, what does that have to do with anything? And we need to understand what is not going well, so that we can see how to make it better. Even in the vows of even in the vows of mind training, there's one vow that says literally it says, don't put the weight the expression is don't pass the buck. It means don't take what is your own responsibility and put it onto somebody else. So the one vow is to do not pass the buck. So if I do something, I try to do it well. But it's really beautiful to be able to admit, when we make mistakes. Okay, I made a mistake. How can I remedy the situation? This reminds me of something when I made a mistake in India. I don't remember exactly what the context was, but I said something to my teacher where it would, and what I said caused a little bit of conflict between my teacher and another one of my teachers who was a disciple of his. And when I realized that I had done that was wrong, at a certain point, my teacher came to me. He was very, very angry, and he said, "How did you?" When I saw that he came to me angry, I said to him, "I'm very sorry. I did this, that, and the other without justifying anything. I admitted openly my mistakes. I said, I did this and that and the other. I was not aware of it. That doesn't take away my responsibility." And I asked, what can I do to resolve the situation? And once, without becoming defensive, openly admitting my mistake, his energy changed completely. So, and then we were together looking for a solution, and I wasn't just the cause of the problem. And then together we talked, and we found a solution, and nothing negative remained between us. So knowing how to admit openly our mistakes is something fundamental. It's a sign of great maturity, and we shouldn't be afraid of the judgment of someone else. In front of our mistakes. I mean, we're all here to learn and to grow. Everything's fine, but have the maturity. Say, this isn't going well. This isn't good. What can I do to resolve the situation, to make it better? But to conclude, we all have wonderful aspects and also negative conditionings. And there's nothing wrong in the sense that we're the result of all the interactions that we've had. I mean, we're a victim of no one, but we're not guilty ones either. I mean, we're humans, we're beings. We're trying to become better. we hope, and we hope. I mean, not everyone has this awareness, but the point is, we should relate to positive attributes, and we should relate to our own positive attributes. We've just finished this great ceremony of blessings of Ramne Chemo. I mean, these are meditation practices where there's the meditation is recited together with the meditation recitation, and a big part of that has to do with identifying oneself with a better version of oneself. Let's say it's like identifying ourselves with patience and stability and love and respect, gratitude and with wisdom. Identify ourselves with deep feelings of love towards everyone, a great compassion towards everyone. And someone asks, well, am I that? No. But it's by identifying myself with that more and more gradually I am going to develop it gradually. It takes it becomes stronger within me. So I invite you all to identify with your qualities, and we have many. And here it's important to have a good self-esteem, which is a kind of positive pride. We should remember the positive things that we have. Identify ourselves with these positive aspects and attributes that we have, and continue to. And even the mantra we did at the beginning, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Soha, this talks about our own capabilities. Muni means capability, ability. Om Muni Muni, ability, a great ability. Shakyamuni is supreme ability. Soha, may it be like this. There are many translations of Soha, but the most common is like that. And let it be like this. The first ability is capability. Ability is to love oneself, to have clarity of what is beneficial, and the strength to cultivate what is good and abandon what is harmful. And we all have this without a doubt. We should just cultivate it more and more, because we also have the ability to self-sabotage, to do things that we like, even though we know they're harmful. We have the ability also to victimize ourselves. We have this ability to follow certain dynamics that are very harmful, but we also have this ability to follow what is beneficial, to relate with others with respect, to see things with more coherence. And it's a choice. It's an inner choice. Because every time we find ourselves faced with a situation, there's that fraction of a second, that moment where we can choose to act in one way or another. And there is all the difference. In that, but to be able to choose, we need to know what direction we're going, where we want to go, what we want to become. And we can recognize and identify ourselves with our qualities and relate to the qualities of other people. Remember that one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. It's not because I relate to positive qualities that the negative aspects should not be worked on and gradually abolished. And we should also have this maturity to openly admit our own mistakes. And when we are face to face with someone who criticizes us, oh, wonderful. Why? because maybe you help me see something that I didn't see before. And if you say something, and if you say something that I don't think is true, then what does that change for me? Instead, if you say something that opens my eyes, well, it's good to know, and then I can redirect myself. But in reality, it's difficult for us to receive, to be critiqued, even from very small things, to receive criticism. Instead, I think that, being criticized or receiving criticism without reacting is marvelous. Knowing how to be criticized in a mature way without being attached to what the other one thinks, but use the comment of the other, or the criticism of someone else as a mirror. Sometimes it's happened to me a couple of times. The criticism of someone else has helped me not. It didn't help me understand myself better, but it helped me understand that the way I was interacting didn't correspond to what my intention was. For example, So, if, for example, if there's someone who complained about something, I say, thank you, you've shown me something that I was just not aware of, so now in the future I'll be more careful, and I think this is something important. And there's nothing wrong. It's on the contrary, being to be criticized in the sense that someone is pointing the finger at something that's not going well, and if we don't agree with that criticism, then okay, thanks, and it just ends there. It doesn't change anything for us, okay? But every day that goes, I need to relate. I need to relate in one way or the other, or in one way or another, and we can make positive choices. We can do so much, through meditation and through sound and recitation. I mean, we can familiarize ourselves with what we want to become in one way or another. I mean, why do we have so many sacred images? Why do we use mantras? Why is there meditation and prayers? Why do we pray before we eat, and after we've eaten, and then when we wake up, and before going to sleep? While you take a shower, while you get dressed. I mean, there's a prayer for everything. A little bit like the Orthodox Jews. If you, there are visualizations for everything you do. Because these are tools to help us familiarize our mind in a certain way, and we need to use all the tools that we have to go in the direction that we want to go. To be more at peace with ourselves, to have more satisfaction, to have more joy, humility, respect, love, gratitude. And remember that we're going to die. And we don't have time to waste with jealousy. We don't have time to waste with envy or fear or dissatisfaction, and much less with anger. We don't have time to waste because I want to familiarize myself with something else. And just let it go. We redirect our actions, our thoughts, and we'll see that it's not immediate. It takes time, but little by little, one day after the other, 1 month after the other, 1 year after the other, things really transform. This takes us to one last thing, just in two words. We're living this very particular situation right now where there's a lot of uncertainty. Things in our lives that we thought were sure, and they're now uncertain, like traveling or being able to see each other. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, putting on the mask, it seemed like, something like only the Chinese did. But now, because they've always used these masks in Asia, especially in the winter. So many certainties that no longer exist, and we need to adapt to every situation that we find ourselves in. And what's important is to focus on how I live every situation, because this situation is going to end. I have no doubt, like all pandemics of the past, at a certain point, they end. I hope, I believe it's not the first time we've had a pandemic. More or less, there's a strong, more or less every 100 years, there's a pandemic. And at a certain point, they end. Historically, the last pandemics lasted 2-3 years, but sooner or later they end. And the day that it does end, what after this whole experience, what have I developed inside? I don't want to have just accumulated fear and anxiety, or have created any kind of addiction to a to some pills, because I have too much anxiety. I want to grow. I want to be better, and so I don't have time. I don't have time to waste, because I want to focus my mind on what is beneficial to me, where I have positive reference points. Because sooner or later, things end, change, but I'm going to continue. Even once the pandemic is over, we'll still be living the consequences of how we lived it. What worries me is that when I think that once the pandemic is over, but the results of how people have lived this experience, those negative side effects will continue. But we are not victims. We should follow our values and virtuous emotions. We shouldn't follow or nourish the negative habits. These habits manifest naturally, but what's important is that when these negative habits show up, we shouldn't nourish them. We shouldn't enter into some kind of dialogue with them. Remember that they're going to pass, and then we go back to connecting with this better aspects of ourselves, these higher attributes. This is about all that I want to share with you tonight. Just remember that to do this path, it's not enough just to think about it. We need to act, and to act, we need to consider the meditation and the mantras, all the tools that are there to help us develop a certain positive identity of ourselves. It's something that we need to do, and I want to remind you also that we have this marvelous refuge, which is first and foremost the Dharma. I see that it's the most precious thing that I have, and I see that for many of us, in these moments of more difficulty, it manifests its importance. So it's really a moment to rejoice, seeing also the great value of the Dharma. And this helps us also to make more conscious decisions. Now it's time for dedications.
Lame kuse rabden chi namkar tinle chokchur gepa losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsel takto ne gyur chi kewa kunto yanda lama dralme cheki pela longche ching sadan lamge yente rabzone dorje change kopa nyur toba shon nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shing ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke jingilo kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol kuncho sumke trashisho all'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Grazie a tutti, buona serata.